rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Bismillahi wa salatu wa salamu ala rasulillah wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'een wa ba'd. Allah in whose name we begin, the eternal with no beginning, everlasting with no ending. Peace and choicest salutations upon the cream of creation, Nabi Muhammad alayhi salatu wassalam. If you've just tuned in, this is Radio Al-Ansaar on 90.4 FM and 105.6 FM with me, your host Shaykh Faheem of the Islamic Lifestyle Solutions. On the program, the Wake Up Project, and analysis of the signs of the end times. Alhamdulillah, by the grace of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, as we normally do remember Him and praise Him the way He ought to be praised. And of course, none of us can, do justice to that, but we do acknowledge the praise of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and say that this particular program now for several years dedicated to, although not restricted to, the subject of the signs of qiyaamah. And we've mentioned the differences between what we say end times and end of time, the signs of qiyamah, Islamic eschatology. And in last week's episode, I think we looked at the subject of civil unrest, particularly with what's been happening in South Africa. And we gave a little bit of time to that particular subject matter. And those of you who have been asking me for it, you can pop into Radio Al-Ansar Book and Media Center. You can request that from them. You can call in and request it as well. Alternatively, you can check out my Facebook page or my YouTube page, and you can try and access it directly from there as well. For those of you who are watching online via the live stream, Jazakallah khair for joining as you normally do. Please try and share the live links on your wall, even on WhatsApp and through other social media, so we can get others involved. Today's program, as we do every now and then, give everyone the opportunity to send forth your questions. I already have some ready here, from the listeners and the viewers. But we'll give you the opportunity to, list your questions pertaining to the subject of Islamic eschatology. And, because what happens is, whilst we're doing the programs, sometimes you have questions that may not be related to the actual theme of the program that we're doing. So it makes it a little bit difficult for us to deal with it at the time. So I urge you all to have those questions ready. You can send them through, and we'll try our level best, inshallah, as Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is the all knowing, to bestow upon us the wisdom and give us the hidayah to explain that to the best of our ability. Of course, Islamic eschatology, it's a very, very vast subject. It delves into so many things, and I hope to, if I've not already done so with my previous book, inshallah, in the next one, to try to make that quite clear, inshallah. Now, the questions that have been coming, and again, because we don't have a specific theme, and today we're looking at things that you, the listeners of Radio Al Ansar, the viewers who have been tuning to the program for several years now, what questions you may have. So, since it may not have a particular theme to it, we will be jumping, between subject matters, and sometimes it may have to be a little bit concise. But I think this is also important, because a lot of the time I end up feeling bad that a certain question comes through, and we have to shove it aside and say we can't deal with it now. So this is important that we do this, right? A very important question, one of the first ones that came through, is, are there only 10 major signs? And why I say this is a very, so firstly, Jazakallah khair for the question. Why I say this is an important question. This is an important question because even yesterday, I was having a discussion with my daughter, Farhat Fatima, um, and she also had a similar question. And this is because when we look into the ahadith, we find that there is a very famous narration about the 10 major signs, right? And I have covered it in my book, The Beginning of the End. Of course, you can't deal with the subject of eschatology without going through these 10 major signs. But when you hear the ulama mention 10 signs, 10 major signs, is it limited to these 10? Because we always hear about the 10. Is that the case? The answer is no. What we need to understand is that from the riwayat, from the narrations, there is one very famous, authentic tradition that brings together 10 signs which are considered amongst the major signs of Qiyamah, 10 of them in one entry. So, whilst there are more than 10 signs of major signs of Qiyamah, these particular signs have been mentioned in one entry, one narration. That's the difference here. So it does not mean that there are only 10 signs. So when you'll hear the ulama mention that there are 10 major signs, and then they quote the narration in which the Prophet ﷺ had mentioned فَذَكَرَ الدُّخَانِ, the smoke, Dajjal, وَالدَّابَّة, the creature of the earth, right? And he goes through all of them. And the last one that the Prophet ﷺ mentioned, the fire that will start from Yemen and it will take the people to a place of gathering and so forth, right? When you hear this particular narration, and it's quite interesting. It starts off with the smoke and it ends off with the fire. But these analytical points of discussion, they require our attention. You should know that whilst these narrations are located in one tradition, they are not limited. So this takes us to a follow-up question. How do we make a distinction between this major sign and other major signs? Because if we say that these are, for instance, the 10 major signs of Qiyamah, then what are the other telltale, mind the pun, other telltale signs to let us know that this is also a major sign? So we first need to understand that this distinction between major and minor signs of Qiyamah was not done by the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam. But no, we do not follow the extremist mentality that will say that everything that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam did not do automatically qualifies as an innovation. If you have to follow that train of thought, you won't be able to do anything much, even in the field of categorization and canonization of subject matters. If we have to say everything, which is an all inclusive word, that would be a little bit silly. And Alhamdulillah, our deen, our religion is a religion that implores the use of the rational faculty. So, what we know is that whilst the Prophet ﷺ did not make this distinction, the ulama, the scholars, the shuyukh, what they have done is they have said that since there are generals and specifics, when you see a subject matter foretold by the Prophet ﷺ that's general. So, for instance, Rasulullah ﷺ mentions that one of the signs of the end times will be that woman will be clothed yet naked. It's a general sign. It doesn't specify which woman, from which area, which tribe, which specific time in history, what is the description of these women. No specifics. It's very general. So the ulama mention that we can put this as a minor sign, though it's coming into reality is a major thing, right? Where a person disregards the Sharia, what has been said in the Quran and the Sunnah, and decides to dress in a manner that contravenes the supposed state of salama which a Muslim is to be in, whereby we say that I am a Muslim, I submit to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, and therefore the laws of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, but I don't submit to those laws that I'm not happy with. Okay, so it's a big thing in that way. But as far as the signs are concerned, then it's considered a minor sign because there's no specifics to it. But when the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam, example, mentions a specific location, a specific people, a specific time, when the specifics are mentioned and the more specific the hadith is, and the more narrations about that same specific thing mentioned at a different time through different narrators with added information, then it strengthens its value in specificity. And so it comes to be known as a major sign. So, likewise, when we can make this distinction between the minor and the major signs of the end times, then we will also be able to understand that when the Prophet sallallahu ta'ala alaihi wasallam mentions some other sign that's specific, then we will automatically recognize it to be a major sign, albeit it's not mentioned with those other 10 signs. So, coming back to that particular question, when we speak about these 10 signs, are they limited to that? No. The signs of qiyamah, the major signs, they are not limited to those 10 entries that we see in the books of hadith. So I hope that particular question is answered over there. So that's one. Let's go to the next question. I'm not sure if there's any questions coming on the WhatsApp line, but we'll just see. And whilst we're waiting for that, inshallah, and we urge the brothers and sisters who have, because it again, whenever I meet you, you tell me that you'd want to send questions. So we've made this particular program open for you. Please make sure that you send them. So another very important question that's come through, Sheikh, some people say that COVID-19 is mentioned in the Quran. Is this true? And is it a sign of Qiyamah? Right? So let me go through that again. Some people say that COVID-19 is mentioned in the Quran. Is this true? And is it a sign of Qiyamah? Right? So we have to be very, very careful about the kinds of information that is being sent out and how we intercept and react with that information. This is very, very important. Why? The Quran is very clear that in Surah Al Hujurat, that we as Muslims, the command is for us to verify. It is very important for us to verify information before sending it out. So we need to bear in mind that if we send information out that is not valid, we become responsible. We become part and parcel of that, right? So I do believe that this the questioner is asking, and I've seen this post make its way on social media, where someone took a verse of the Quran. If I'm not mistaken, I think it is in Surah Muzammil, alayha tis'ata ashar, where the number 19 is mentioned. And they say that the Quran here mentions 19, and then intentionally they intentionally mix or misinterpret certain other words of the Quran to make it seem as if it's speaking about COVID. Now, let me just make something clear to you. There are some people out there who are, how do I say it, obsessed with the idea of the number 19 in the Quran. I'm not going to delve into who they are and their names now, it won't cost me anything to go through it. And those of you who know me will know that, I'm not even bothered about it. But it's not the forum for it now. I don't want to deviate from the topic of discussion. It's most likely come from this group. We call them the 19ers because they're obsessed with it. The reasons, separate topic, right? So, no, for the first part of the question, no, the Quran does not discuss COVID 19 or the coronavirus, COVID 19 in the Quran. No. Is it a sign of Qiyamah? So, is COVID 19 a sign of Qiyamah? Not that we know of. What we do know is that the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam did foretell, as an example, widespread death, like what we see today. We've never seen before on a global scale the kind of messages pertain to deaths as a result of something like this. We haven't seen that before on a global spectrum, right? The Prophet ﷺ did foretell. Um, and if you look, example, in Al-Bukhari, if I'm not mistaken, where the Prophet ﷺ, in the famous narration where he said, "U'dud sitta bayna yaday as-sa'a," that counts six things before my demise. Of those six things, he mentioned um, what we would call like wholesale kind of death, right? And a kind of death, and in that he mentioned sallallahu alaihi wasallam a plague. But this plague should not be misconstrued in that hadith to be COVID-19, because many of uh, our brothers and sisters who just read hadith in isolation, they run to these isolated traditions, and then they say we discovered something. We shouldn't do that, because that is believed to have been the plague and the outbreak in the area of Sham that took place later. So let's not rush to any immature or premature conclusions in that regard. So, is COVID 19 mentioned in the Quran? Uh, Not that we know of, no. And if it's the specific narration, or instead of narration, the specific report that's going out in the form of a WhatsApp broadcast message, and that's also on Facebook and so forth, then definitely not. That is uh, a gross misrepresentation of what the verse in Surah Muzammil mentions. So, no. And is it a sign of Qiyamah? COVID 19 in those words, coronavirus in those words, not mentioned by the Prophet, ﷺ, but yes, foretelling of plagues, viruses, if you want to call it that, foretelling of mass death. Yes, those things have been foretold. We don't have to lie to make certain things seem true about our deen, because there are many, many truths that have already come to pass. We don't need to lie to make people realize that our deen is true. The truth is good enough for that. We'll take a quick break, inshallah, and when we return, we'll look through some other questions pertaining to today's program. Remember, today's program is about Q&A, questions on eschatology from you, our listeners and our viewers. You can send them through, and inshallah we'll try to deal with them. Stay tuned. Assalamu alaikum.
It's new, it's fresh, it aims to inspire, educate, inform, and ignite hope. It's Outreach in Progress. Catch the Outreach team every Thursdays between 2 and 3 p.m. Exclusive to Radio Al-Ansaar, 90.4 FM and 105.6 in Petermaritzburg. Uplifting through giving.
There's a place in your heart, and I know that it is love.
Welcome to Simplex Radio. Visit our showroom for the full range of car audio. Our TV department carries top brands with quality LED panels, full HD to Ultra HD, and now the experience of Super Ultra HD. Visit our theater rooms and transform your home with brands like Onkyo, Integra, Denon, Boston Acoustics, Yamaha, and more for quality audio visual experience. Now available full range of home appliances. For one-stop shopping experience. Call 313-64029 or Kenilworth Park, 202 Brickfield Road, Overport. Simplex Radio, the name you can trust.
The names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is proudly brought to you by Turkiya, the Modest Boutique. 580 Ridge Road, Demir Katio
Ah,
for
it
the
was nice.
discerning.
Al-Hayy is one of the
Nothing.
beautiful names of Allah subhanahu wa
Took
ta'ala.
it'll take a couple of weeks
It
before you
appears
get
5
back
times
into
in
the
the
swing
Quran.
of things.
Yeah.
And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, وَتَوَكَّلْ عَلَى الْحَيِّ الَّذِي لَا يَمُوتُ, and rely upon the ever-living, the one who does not die. Every single one of us has someone in our life that we
Alhamdulillah.
rely
I
upon,
went to
someone who is our world. It could be a parent, it
You
could
won't
be
be
a
able to take
child,
clips,
it could be a sibling, it could be a
No.
best friend.
This thing is
But
crap.
every
You have
single
to get a new
person that we
device.
love, one of two things is going to happen. Either we are going to leave before them, or they are going to leave before us. And if they leave before us, we're
But
devastated.
hopefully tomorrow
And
we'll
Allah
definitely.
subhanahu wa
Now I
ta'ala
have to
says,
speak to
don't
Fatima.
rely on anybody
Right,
else,
right.
rely
Yeah.
on Him. Because
They
He
know
is
about
the
it.
only one
No, I'm on
who's going to be with you
Yeah,
on
you
your
can tell her.
journey from the beginning until the end. Rely upon Al-Hayy.
The names and attributes of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is proudly brought to you by Turkey, the modest boutique. 580 Ridge Road, Demir Katio for the discerning.
Turkey brings to you the modest boutique, where elegance meets style and exclusivity meets you. Come in and view our carefully handpicked range of exceptional quality garments for every occasion, from timeless classics to the latest trends, a range of fabrics to suit
Yeah,
your taste.
fine.
Abayas, topcoats, dresses, scarves, and accessories. Let us bring out the diva in you. We offer you a truly relaxing shopping experience. Secure on-site parking, open 7 days a week. Follow us on Instagram at Turkiya_Dublin or call 08
J.
786 1065. Turkiya, the milk couture for the discerning.
We won't have a break now, right? Till 5 o'clock.
No problem. 5-2, yeah. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi ta'ala wa barakatuh. Welcome back to the Wake Up Project. This is me, your host, Shaykh Faheem, co-founder of the Islamic Lifestyle Solutions, on the Wake Up Project and analysis of the signs of the end times. Our program for today, not themed to any particular topic, giving you, the listener, and the viewers the opportunity to send your questions through. Okay, so we looked at the first question that was about the 10 signs, and that was asking if are there only 10 major signs or are there more. We've gone through that. The other one that came through was and sorry, and the follow-up from that was how do we make the distinction between the minor signs and the major signs. Then we looked at COVID-19. Is it mentioned in the Quran? The answer was, to our knowledge, no. Of course, not in those words anyway. And is it a sign of Qiyamah? Again, no, not in those words. But we do know that there are prophecies about plagues and mass death and so forth, right? Another question pertaining to the signs of Qiyamah is that people, example, people keep saying in, let me read this correctly, in lectures, etc., this is Dajjal's doing, and this is what Dajjal wants. Do they mean that Dajjal is here and doing these things? Okay, so what I understand from this question is that probably when they are scholars, or I'm hoping that the person is listening to the viewpoints from ulama on these topics, and when the person is explaining it and they're saying, after making their point, that, for example, this is Dajjal's doing. So Dajjal is the one who's doing XYZ thing. Or if there's a specific idea in society, this is what Dajjal wants. So the question is, do these views really mean that Dajjal is here and doing these things? It's actually a good question, because, I mean, even if on Radio Al-Ansar, I'm sure there are many, many, audio talks going on, and there will be people speaking about the topic. So it's also good to understand this. So the answer for that would be, if our understanding is that Dajjal is physically there telling them what to do and they are doing it, then the answer for that is no. A simple way to understand this, and this is how I explained it again to my daughter the other day as well. If you have an opportunity, if you can, if you're close to your computer or your phone now, a nice way to have a visual understanding of what I'm saying to you would be to Google the $1 bill, right? Now, forget conspiracy theories and all that there. I just want you to visualize something to make the point, right? If you can Google, or if you have a very good, maybe not an eidetic memory, but a very good memory, and if you check the $1 bill, you will find that there's a pyramid, okay? But if you look carefully and you zoom in, you'll see that the pyramid's not complete, all right? Now, again, what was their reason for that? Forget that. I'm using this as a visual analogy for you to understand what is meant by this, right? So let's just say there's a pyramid. And if you look at that particular pyramid, and there's a top piece of the pyramid that has an eye. And that's one of the most famous pictures when people want to have a representation of the Dajjalic ideology. You'll find that particular image quite vastly and quite popularly spread. Now, if you look carefully between the triangle at the top where the eye is located and the rest of the pyramid, there's a gap. Why? Because if you understand it now, there needs to be a preparation to allow that top part where the eye is, meaning if you look at it that way as Dajjal, there has to be a coming together. There needs to be a very good solidifying ground and a prep work, a preparation for Dajjal before he comes. And who's going to do this? Starting off, this project is Shaitan. Shaitan is the driving force who will, through his waswasa and the jinn, get people to do his bidding, get them to believe in the Antichrist, in Al-Masih al-Dajjal. Once these people, of course, if we understand things correctly, these people who have devoted themselves to this ideal believe that they are working to bring their master into the world. So they are going to do everything in their power, albeit they have none. But within their capacity, they want to prepare to complete that pyramid, to bring it together, in order for them to have their master, Al-Masih al-Dajjal, with them. So, no, Al-Masih al-Dajjal is not here physically making them do these things. But remember, if you look at the hadith of Tamim al-Dari, where there was an encounter with Sayyidina Tamim al-Dari, the Sahabi, who met Dajjal on an island. And when he met Dajjal, Dajjal was well aware of things that were happening. Now, why was he possibly aware of things that were happening? Because when they got onto the island, they met this other being who was identified as a jassasa, as a spy. This spy is in all probability relaying information to Al-Masih al-Dajjal. So he's aware of things that are occurring, that are happening around him. So whether or not it's possible for him to relay information, that's a separate topic altogether. But they are well aware of what needs to happen in order for the red carpet to be laid for Dajjal to come. So, no, he is not yet here physically. Now, the question about a few months ago, I did a program where a certain quarter of the Orthodox Jews they believe that a certain gentleman within their circle is the Messiah. And I've been telling everyone to keep an eye on that development. Yesterday, as well, a friend of ours from Benoni, Hafiz Aslam, he had asked also a question which many others ask us as well, which is, we keep hearing the year 2020 coming up in many conversations. And what I said to him is what I will relay as well to our listeners. There seems to be some kind of event planned for around this time. What it is, we don't know. It could also be nothing, because a lot of the time the mind plays tricks. So, my advice to people is don't focus too much on the numbers, right? But coming back to the question, we know that when the Dajjal will come, there will be certain things that will have to occur. All of them haven't happened yet. But when they do happen, it will become clear to those people who are aware anyway. But the fact that everyone's asking about it now, it means that we are becoming more aware, alhamdulillah. But remember, whilst this is also very important, we must also prepare and do what we can and look to ourselves as well. So, the answer to the question, no, it is not meant that the Dajjal is physically there, but rather that there are groups of people, many of them, who have devoted themselves to the Dajjalic ideology and who are working tirelessly to bring about the signs so that he can emerge. I will remind our listeners and our viewers again that if you just go onto YouTube and do a search and you do just a little play around on the words, you can search example Netanyahu being scolded by Rabbi, very old video, maybe some 15, 20 years ago, and you will see that he was being scolded by a high authority rabbi and being asked, why is the Messiah not here? And his response is, we're working on it. We're doing everything. We're working on it. So a lot of the things that may seem to the minds of the blind masses out there as political ideas for the benefit of people, there are hidden agendas out there to bring to fruition certain prophecies, even in their quarters, about the Dajjal. So we have to keep these things in mind. So that's the other question. Another question from our listeners is, Sheikh, how many years before Nabi Adam alayhi salam returns? I'm sorry, why? Because sometimes people ask me, they assume that we know these answers, and Jazakallah khair for that. But nobody knows the answers to these questions, and anyone who says that they know, they are lying. Anyone who assumes and tries to garner some kind of support and tell you that they know, they are lying. For if anybody could tell you a precise answer to this question, was my Nabi sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and he didn't tell us. So we don't know. But when it comes to this, there's a reason why the Prophet alayhi salatu wasalam gave us the signs. The signs are our guidelines that give us an approximation of what is to come. And inshallah, with everybody's dua and support, and of course, this is no secret, my mom is my number one fan, and it is through her du'as. Of course, my dad is late. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala give him Jannah. It is when anyone asks me or gives any kind of compliment, it is my habit to say it is the dua of our parents and the hard work of our teachers. That's it. But through y'all's du'as, inshallah, next year, I would like to do another book on the subject and unravel a step further how the signs are just one part of it. There's another secret unlocked within these signs. And if we can unlock that for each and every one of them, which I can't do on my own, I don't have the tools or the resources. But if I can start that process and hopefully others can take it further, we will show that how the Prophet ﷺ foretold this particular age like nobody else could have 1400 years ago, and that maybe will give us a little bit more insight into the subject matter. So Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam did not give us the exact time. The Quran did not give us the exact time. How many years? Now on the subject of years, when people start talking about years, don't get entrapped in that. Someone tells you, I think it's going to be 20 years. I had a dream. MashaAllah. Dreams are not dreams are not an evidence in Sharia. You can't have a dream that somebody person X killed person Y and go to the court and tell them that it's not haqiqah. It's not a reality. It's not something that exists in reality as a shay. You can't use that, right? So, in as much as it may be an indication, you can't base creed on that. So as a result of that, when people say, I believe it's going to be X, Y, and they start calculating, people love this. They love to play with numbers. I think this is going to happen. Okay, let's find a consistency here. Consistency plus this, plus that. You can play with numbers. 2 plus 2 is 4. So we got that there. But also 3 plus 1 is 4. And also, 5 minus 1 is also 4. There's so many ways to get to it. And people can play around. So don't get caught up in that, right? What you do when it comes to this Nabi Isa alayhi salam, as when Dajjal will emerge, that will be your first indication. Dajjal's emergence is the first, I won't say the first, but the primary indicator that Nabi Isa alayhi salam will emerge. And of course, Imam al-Mahdi, inshallah, right? So there are numerous things, but don't let anyone trick you about how many years. We don't know. But as the signs emerge, as each one emerge, remember Rasulullah also told us, if you imagine your tasbih, so like a necklace, when you break it, and if it breaks, and those beads as they fall, once they begin to emerge, like those beads falling, the Prophet ﷺ told us that's how the signs will emerge, right? We got, I think we can take one more question here, Sheikh. What I have noticed is that famous singers use that triangle and the eye to draw the audience. Is that how Satan, jinn are attracting the youth? And is this how Dajjal plans to draw the youth's attention? I would firstly agree. Yes, it is now regarded as amongst the signs of the satanic cults out there. Some cases they use inverted imagery as well. That's a separate thing. And that's why you have backmasking, which is an inverted means of getting messages across. But yes, they do the triangle. And I don't want to do it. So someone will take a screen grab and they'll call me a Satanist as well, right? So they have the triangle, the eye, and they do it in a way where the left eye in particular is showing. These are all telltale signs that we have to see. And in relation to the jinn, that's a separate topic altogether, how they are attracted to us. That's why we are told to be in a state of purity, in a state of tahara, a state of wudu, because a Muslim who is in a state of wudu, there's already one protective barrier. But you don't want to be in wudu, you want to be in a state of uncleanliness. And then when the unclean things are attracted to you, then you want to go and ask the shuyukh and the ulama for this dua and and that wadhaif and this ayah of Quran, so you can avoid all of those things, right? But in particularly, the youth are a target. How? Because Suratul Kahf of the Quran is the only surah related and connected to Dajjal. And Suratul Kahf, the word Kahf, connected to the cave. And in the cave, who was sleeping? Youth. But the Quran also told us how to safeguard the youth. How did the youth safeguard themselves? They went away from the lawless society. Now, we're not telling our youth to pack the bags and run away. There are other ways to keep yourself at a fair distance from all of these things, to detach from the lawless community and to stay away. And if you look at the um, Suratul Kaf, you'll see specific mention that their ears were covered. Their ears were covered. And how does the satanic music affect our youth of today? To the sound media, which is again a different subject matter altogether. So it is very, very important. And again, shukran for the questions that have been coming through. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala reward you. Maybe once a month we have to do this, because I see time is not enough for the questions, and maybe it'll give everyone the opportunity to keep them at hand. Maybe each program will bank them and do once a month to allow us this opportunity to just go into various subject matters. Unfortunately, with time restraints, it becomes difficult, but I will bear this in mind. As a solution to the problem of these fears, recite Suratul Kaf on a Thursday evening, meaning from Thursday Maghrib. You have the window till Friday Maghrib, but even every day, the first 10 verses of Suratul Kaf, according to the hadith, whoever memorizes them, Osima min ad-Dajjal. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala will safeguard you from that day. Make the dua to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala to protect you from the fitna of Dajjal. And some narrations mention that if you do this, if you recite these verses, these 10 verses of Surah Al-Kahf, Allah ta'ala will create with you, inside you, a nur, not a physical light, because we know that nur is also ilm, nur is knowledge. And this ilm will help you to make the correct decisions. Instead of making the decisions that lead you to the Dajjali ideology, you will make the correct decisions that takes you to the prophetic pathway, inshallah, that leads you to the ultimate destiny, which is the correct one, right? A destination. So this is very, very important for us, that we do these things and we don't fall prey to the Dajjali ideology. Unfortunately, I don't want to deal with another question because of the time constraints. Just a quick reminder that inshallah, this evening you will catch myself and Mufti Omar Dawood on the Maulana Saleh Jusab Arbi webcast. There's a little dhikr program, I think, commencing at 7:30 p.m. And thereafter, we will be discussing the four khulafa, although the khulafa Rashidun are five, but we'll be discussing four of them, inshallah, tonight, in honor of them. And some important discussions will take place. Hopefully, we'll see you there. If anything good has been achieved, the praise belongs to Allah. The faults are mine. Astaghfirullah Rabbi min kulli dhanbi wa atubu ilayh. Wassalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.